You know, just a couple thoughts from me before we sort of before I turn it over to the great panelists. So I tell you what I don't want to talk about, if I can be so heavy-handed, and what you're not going to hear. You know, you're not going to hear the office is dead. I call bullshit on that. The office is thriving, and I think we are absolutely entering a great age of innovation in office space. We're not going to talk about when people are coming back, because they're coming back. We're not going to talk about, you know, specific cities and is New York, over San Francisco, Miami, Toronto. No, I mean, cities have been reinventing. If you're as old as I am, you've been watching this story over and over and over again play out. Cities innovate, they get better, they change with the times, they adapt. So we're not going to talk about any of that. But what I really want to talk about is, for me, I'm so excited about this era that's about to unfold, particularly in the office sector. Space as a service, hospitality, the new nature of work. I mean, again, as I said before, we are living through one of the great periods of innovation as it relates to work. And what I'm so excited about is to really sit back and listen to these great panelists talk about what their companies are doing to meet the market demand, what the market demand looks like. We're going to talk about technology, tenants, landlords, et cetera, et cetera. So I hope it's interesting for the audience, and it's more sort of forward thinking than sort of like a look back as to where we've been. So having said that, I'll ask each of the panelists if they could just introduce themselves. Ladies first, Anna, if you could say hello, tell everybody about you and your current role at Industrious.
Sure. Hey, everyone. Nice to see you. My name's Anna. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer at Industrious, and we're the leading workplace as a service provider here in the US. We have about 110 locations in more than 50 cities, and I'm right now sitting, as you can see, in an office in Brooklyn, thank goodness, out of the guest bedroom of my house. And what I will say just quickly is, a lot of people think of this industry as flex or agile, which of course it is, and it could be, but for us, the sweet spot is really about employees' experience at work and when they're in the office. So excited to talk more about that.
Great, terrific. Jeremy, terrific to sponsor this session. So if you could just introduce yourself and the company.
Sure. Hey, everybody. Jeremy Bernard. I'm the CEO of North America for Essensys. We are a technology company that provides a software operating system for flexible space. So we do everything from digital infrastructure, space management, flexible operations, and occupier experience. We were founded about 15 years ago in London, a publicly traded global firm, and we power about 20 million square feet of space in 28 countries around the world. Looking forward to the conversation.
Mike, my neighbor across the bridge, or introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, sure. My name is Mike Caracciolo. I work for Tishman Speyer for now 15 plus years, variety of different functions, and I had the opportunity to start the studio operation at Rockefeller Center back in 2018. Since then, we've grown to 9 markets covering 20 locations across all our different product lines, Flux office product lines. Very interested in the topic today and then the panelists with me.
Great. Wayne, it's good to see you. I think the last time we saw each other was December of 2019. Feels like a lifetime ago, my friend. If you could introduce yourself to the audience.
Thanks, Mike. You're right. Without beards and long hair. My name is Wayne Berger, CEO of the Americas with IWG International Workplace Group. Many of the attendees will probably know us from some of our brands, most notably Regis and Spaces. We operate 3,600 locations around the world, including just under 1,100 flexible workspace locations in the United States, spans across 500 cities, 25 million square feet. And similar to, I'm sure, Anna and Mike, my mission in life is to ensure that every single person has an amazing day at work. So it's my goal, and big part of that is helping enable with great digital and physical solutions. So, and I'm thrilled to be here with both you and the panel.
That's great, Wayne. That's a great sort of way to kick off the discussion. And I'll start with you, Anna. So let's sort of just unpack for the audience and frame the discussion. What is the state of the marketplace today? Meaning, what are some of the major trends that you're seeing from a flex space, from a tenant experience lens? Sort of tell us what you think the major themes are right now, Anna.
So I think the main thing I'm seeing is that everyone's really tired of talking about hybrid. We're like at this moment where everyone's sick of the jargon, and a lot of companies are now starting to think about what that means in real life, in particular, because depending where you are in the US, as vaccination rates increase, you start to see your family, you see your friends, and it's only a couple of weeks before you're like, man, I'd really love to see my colleagues too. Maybe not every day, but some of the time. We're seeing that smaller companies, so say less than 500 employees, are ahead of the curve on this, and they're coming back to the office in part more quickly than the larger companies. And the larger companies are thinking about how to actually make this work. And what we're thinking about is, instead of just saying, we know my employees don't want to be in the office 5 days a week and they don't want to be home 5 days a week, how do you actually add structure to those decisions? And so what we're seeing and also advising our members is to think about it for any one company at 3 levels. So we say, hey, there's some company level rules, like, hey, we're all going to go to a retreat in the Poconos in September. Maybe there's only 1 or 2 rules at the company level. Then there's city level rules. You live in New York, you live in Chicago, you live in Kansas City. How is your company teammates in that city, how are they going to interact with each other? Could be in person or not. And then there's team level rules. I'm on the marketing team and we meet every Monday at 9 a.m. And so each employee, for any given company, can have their own little scorecard of, here's how I operate and here's what I do. And we're seeing a lot of companies adopt that approach and also think about it as a very helpful, simplifying way to make sense of what otherwise feels like a pretty vague and confusing task to figure out what hybrid means for you.
Right. Mike, why don't you try and unpack that a little bit? So what is it that you're seeing at Studio today? What does it look like on the ground for Tishman Speyer?
I think what we're seeing, a common theme, especially the last quarter, is additional flexibility. And I know it's funny to say more flexibility in Flex Office, but it's the combination of different packages that were out there being used to provide a full solution for a company, whether that's small or enterprise level. We're seeing an increase in focus of coming back to the office. The way in which those are engaging are in different company to company. And it's looking, we're looking to help adopt our offering to help accommodate them coming to the office based on their own, their own way. And we're seeing that from, multi-location all access memberships to single tenant spaces that are fully serviced to even event space where you need to hold a large conference. So from like A to Z, we're seeing all sorts of interest around how to put this together to get them engaging. As a result of that, I think there's another big, rally around technology. Technology has always been an asset and an area that has grown so much since I've been involved since 2018. But because companies were forced to adopt this digital platform overnight and operate that way, expectations when they come back to the office actually increased. So we were needing to accommodate a wider range of companies and setups and different requests across the board. And then lastly, because I think there's really 2 forces that are coming around with technology. It's because of this flexibility. Technology is looked to help remove additional friction. So company A, B, and C all have different ways that they want to work, and whether it's multi-location, one location, hoteling, whatever model, they're looking to technology solutions to accomplish that.
Yeah, that's great. Wayne, from your vantage point, I know you've got a global portfolio. What's striking about some of the patterns and the trends that you're seeing on the ground today?
I think there's a few things, Mike, that we're seeing. One, the nature of work and workplace is shifting so dramatically. And one thing we're seeing is this kind of ubiquitous nature on how people are looking at work moving forward. So companies right now are looking to try to redeploy their employees and understand how they can best serve their employees. And I think there's a couple of really exciting things that we're seeing. One, we've always offered up flexibility. There's no doubt, to Mike and Anna's point, but we're seeing this demand and this need for an even greater degree of flexibility, where where it's less about becoming centric on one location and more about giving their employee base access to space based on what their needs are, when their needs take place, and where their needs are required. So we've seen in the last 2 months close to 1 million additional memberships be added from companies. So companies like Standard Chartered, NTT, Staples, Dell have all been looking towards us and I think other flex-based providers to give their employees the ability to utilize and access space as simply as kind of accessing their Spotify account, right? So space is becoming more liquid than ever before. And that's a real fundamental change. And what's interesting is right now it's all taking place through the lens of a pandemic, right? It's like helping people move out of home back to, let's call it an office, not necessarily the office, but an office environment. But what's happening is it's also starting to help support health and wellness needs for employees and giving employees the benefit of being able to have the values that they appreciated working from home, but still give them the ability to have the separation of home and work, right? By working closer to. So one of the big shifts we've seen is this notion and need for membership, partly to get people back to work safely, but more importantly, to help people work from a great location, a great workplace that doesn't necessarily have to have the name of the company on its building.
Love that. That's great insight. Jeremy, from essensys's point of view, you're a technology platform, you're powering so much of the sector, right? What looks differently with your business today as it did sort of pre-pandemic? And what are some of the trends that you're hearing and seeing from your customer base?
Yeah, a couple things. I mean, as far as trends, as Mike said, tenants and their employees are looking for frictionless experience. That's critical right now. So, keyless access, contactless experiences within the office, space management, booking conference rooms, using your phone, things like that the demand for that has increased tremendously. The other thing is security, right? So as I know Anna said, she doesn't want to talk about hybrid and I don't either. I don't think anyone does. But the reality is people are going to be working from their home one day, a local co-working space the next day, and maybe HQ on the third day. And they want to make sure that they have proper, secure, Wi-Fi, don't have to, have any concerns about data security or data breaches. So there's been a large demand for, that piece of the technology stack. I think the other thing that's changed, which is really interesting, is landlords are really now asking the question of how do we do flex, whether it's partnering with Industrious or Studio, or in some cases trying to do it themselves. It used to be, pre-pandemic, maybe we need it, maybe we don't need it, but now they've appreciated that they have to do flex. We all know why. We all know the demand is there. But we're speaking with lots of landlords now, some of the largest ones in the world, about how to activate flex in their portfolio, and actually not just make it about the one floor of flex and the four walls of flex, but how do you make it accessible to their existing tenant base in their building, the other 95% of the space, and how do you incorporate that into an entire portfolio and make your space more attractive to accommodate this sort of new work environment that we're all going to be coming back to.
Yeah, that's great, Jeremy. And Anna, just to stay on the theme about technology, obviously that's my whole, focus at CREtech is all about technology in the built world. What role is technology playing for Industrious, for the sector as a whole? And where do you see it really gaining in terms of importance and focus?
I think as choices about where and how and when to work are kind of democratized, so to speak, like to Wayne's point about companies wanting to empower their employees more, there's a baseline level of technology that has to be in place just to do it. Like, where am I going to go? How am I going to get there? How do I get in? Can I order a coffee to my desk? And I think some new needs are going to come about or already coming about that are pretty interesting. So just today, I happened to be in an Industrious. I showed up to this Industrious. 6 of my colleagues happened to be here. We did not coordinate all being here on the same day, but we're so thrilled to see each other. So that's the kind of thing, like I'm imagining a find my friends kind of functionality that doesn't have to go through, let me reserve a desk and let me search my friend and see if they've reserved a desk. That's like somehow more seamless. And I'm sure there are going to be lots of other applications like that that will come to the fore.
Great idea.
And I'm excited about that.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Mike, a studio in Tishman has a long history in terms of technology innovation. Where's the role of tech play today that's as important as ever in your view?
Well, I have to agree with Anna. You know, I think because of all these different working workplace models that are being tried, possibly failing, others will stick. I think it's going to require a lot of innovation in this area, not only for our specific studio places, but overall, if you look at the whole portfolio, how to allow companies to actually execute the real estate strategy that they're designing right now. And while it may look great on paper, may even sound great, actually performing that and managing it and running it is a different story. And I think there will be a lot of changes with the technology to support that. And a lot of it will be based on the backbones that have been created in this market, but I see additional innovation coming.
Wayne?
I mean, I think there's no doubt. I mean, I think technology plays such a key enabler in this case. And I don't even think we can truly appreciate the impact of technology as we're still transitioning from this 4G to 5G world. We move to 5G, it's a completely new game changer. The level of data transformation, I mean, we'll be able to engage and interact together via our mobile devices, transferring millions and millions of gigs of data back and forth. So it just drives the seamless nature of work, right? And you know, we've all been, for many of us, we've all been in this work from home or work close to home bubble over the last 13 months. And these types of platforms have many times, you know, been kind of our pure ability to gather together, right? And to Anna's point, technology has democratized work at this point, which is great because we're all living in the same environment, right? So except for Mike, who's back in an office, and Anna today, which is great. I'm jealous. But I think what's happening is technology we need to recognize that first of all, it's accelerated probably 10 years in the last 13 months. And it's going to play a greater role. So when I think about it, IWG, we used to be very focused at the workplace model. You know, for us, it was about building the largest network and collection of services, both virtual and physical, to support the very, very different types of clients. Because we knew that we wanted to get to a place where we can offer up the convenience of accessing a physical workspace based on needs, geography, price point, et cetera. But it's completely shifted now where network is critical. There's no doubt about it, physical space, but frankly, work is not going to be where you do it from. It's going to be what you're doing at that very specific point. So layering in technology that's secure, that's safe, that's digital enabled, that is easy to access regardless of an employee's current situation, whether that's home or work, is going to be so significant to move forward. And one of the things that we've been trying to do is shifting the solutions to not just continue to grow the network, but also begin to deploy different businesses that help support workers when they're at home. And then also help support them when they're en route from home to an office, right? And then when they get to an office, how do we ensure that a company's data is secure and that team members have the ability to be able to be engaged as effectively as possible, as seamlessly as possible? So now it's 3 different worlds that you have to bring together. It's not just about great tech or a great digital experience at a workplace.
Yeah, that's great. That's really wonderful, wonderful themes. Jeremy, just to finish with you there, from essensys's point of view, what does the roadmap look like for the company in terms of technology, given where we're at and the next 12, 24, 36 months, what are you going to be thinking about working on to address some of these market dynamics?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, we have a whole team of people that work in essensys labs, where all they do is think about what is the next sort of technology to come. As a public company, we're not allowed to actually talk about some of those things. We have
Oh, it's just us. Don't worry. Nobody's listening.
a couple of hundred people, but but yeah, I mean, it is one of the things that we spend a ton of time in R&D at the company, and sort of keeping a few steps ahead of the curve, working with our operator partners and our landlord partners, and giving them assurances that we're always thinking about those technologies, and we're so they don't have to. I think particularly with landlords, it's a business that's been bricks and mortar largely for hundreds of years, right? And we're experiencing this digital transformation of the office right now, where landlords have to adapt, have to figure out what their tenants need and what ultimately employees need. And a lot of this is not stuff that they're used to. They haven't been doing it for dozens of years. So we try to provide that level of sort of partnership to the landlords that we work with on making sure they have sort of the latest and greatest.
Yeah, let's stay on then. Let's move into a quick conversation about landlords. For me, having been in this industry for so long, commercial real estate, 35 years, I've never seen a time where landlords are being so innovative. It's not just technology, it's space design, it's marketing, it's branding, it's everything. And whether you call it space as a service, or you think that the office market now has to position itself and think of itself as being in the hospitality business, it's very, very exciting times in my view. Anna, we'll stay with you. We'll go to you. Like, from your perspective, what are you seeing from landlords specifically, and how are they working with Industrious today, perhaps again differently than pre-pandemic?
I mean, so many ways, but I think one of the coolest things that's happening right now is that because our whole portfolio are partnership agreements with landlords, we're in it together, we're sharing the economics, it affords us and our landlord partners the opportunity to try out a lot of new stuff. And so one thing that we're seeing a lot of right now is using that partnership to our advantage to basically invent and then sign whole new kinds of agreements with our members. So for example, a big company could say, great, I know I want a long-term lease in building X for these 3 floors, and I'm pretty confident, I need that space for the next several years. So let me sign a 10-year lease. And in the same agreement, I'm going to basically buy options into various kinds of Industrious spaces just downstairs. Sometimes it's for meeting rooms. Sometimes it's whole suites I have the ability to grow into. Sometimes it's for my LA team that happens to be visiting and needs space for 4 tomorrow. And so what we're seeing is we could work with our landlord partners to make that whole thing so much easier for our customers, because they can work with one point of contact on one contract through the whole building, but for the first time have access to so many different kinds of space and memberships all in one go.
Yeah, Wayne, Mike, his company is a landlord, but I'll come back to you, Mike. I got a question for you, Wayne. What are you seeing from the landlord lens?
I'll say, in the 7 years that I've been in the industry, I've never seen a point where we've had landlords more openly interested in and driven to really continue to push and add that element of flexibility. The reality is we operate 1,100 locations in the US. A decent percentage of those are partnership agreements, obviously similar to Anna at Industrious. We also have a large portfolio that is a traditional leasehold, right? What's happening now is our pipeline of partnership agreements with our landlords has never been stronger. And it's not just in relationship to entrepreneurial smaller cap landlords, it's the largest institutional landlords, because they're starting to take a look at their buildings. There was a time period where their development projects and buildings was about obviously underwriting the building, driving that asset growth, and return on that asset. But now what's happening is they're recognizing that flex does play a considerable role, and there's a real need from their tenants. To Anna's point earlier, we're seeing tenants come in really driving the message with landlords to say, look, we do believe that a significant portion of our own real estate portfolio should be in partnership direct with landlords. At the same point, we need flex because our workers, our employee base, whether it's all based in New York or based in 50 cities around the world, need some form of flexibility in order to engage and drop in, et cetera. And landlords now are turning to say, okay, instead of trying to determine what they want to do with flex, whether it's on their own or with a great partner like Industrious or Tishman, Speyer or IWG, it's now saying we understand that there are best-in-class operators. Let's partner together and let's find a way to elevate our own projects, our own buildings, and give our clients what they're looking for. So I would say it's the most bullish that we've seen when it comes to working with landlords.
That's great to
Very
hear.
exciting. It's
That's a
very
headline.
exciting.
I want to see that headline of the real deal tomorrow. Mike, from my perspective, and I have a lot of great friends in addition to you at Tishman Speyer, when the firm launched your Flex co-working solution studio, I mean, that for me was kind of shocking, right? It was early. There's others that have followed suit, but you guys were really early in that strategy. So now looking forward, what's some of the expansion plans that you could share with the audience from your perspective?
Yeah. So, maybe just taking a step back when we first started, the real fundamental reason is our customers, right? Providing from day one the ability to provide them flexibility within the real estate, new companies coming in that need to step into our platform and allowing them to be organically adjusted according to their plans, workplace plans. So I think that's been a fundamental driver of our Flux platform. Since then, we've developed other derivatives of our initial studio brand, which include Studio Private, which is a single tenant service space, Studio Gather event space, and Studio Plus, which is providing those same types of workplace experiences in all real estate. So for us, I think that the biggest areas of growth are going to be providing our tenants options to use Flux where and when they need it, and to expand the offering to include real estate even outside of our own footprint, partnering with strategic companies.
Great. Jeremy, so if we move into sort of like the tenants lens, what can you say? What sort of feedback are you seeing from your perspective as what demand's looking like today? How could you describe it? What's important from the tenant perspective that you might be seeing and uncovering either with your clients or the platform? If we focus on tenants first for the next couple minutes.
Yeah, sure. I think, as I said, I mean, the tenants are at the end of the day are looking for this sort of frictionless experience. They want to be able to have the technology to support working from wherever they are. And that sort of drives, most of what we do and what we provide our landlord and operator partners. I think, I guess also, we're spending some time also on sort of space monetization. So understanding how the space is utilized. Tenants want to, at the end of the day, pay for the space that they're using. So we're spending a fair amount of research and development on that technology. So yeah, that's probably the two leading things.
That's great. Yep, we're seeing very much the same. Anna, from your perspective, from the tenant lens, what does the demand look like in terms of priorities that you could talk about?
Well, overall demand, and also related to the question I see just asked in the chat.
I saw that. That's a great one.
Is huge right now.
Thank you.
And from a sales point of view, we are way above where we were before COVID. So
wow.
If anything, I think we've been, excited about, but also pleasantly surprised by how quickly folks are wanting to get back out there. I think mostly once they're vaccinated. And again, to Jeremy and Mike and Wayne's points, this isn't always like, let me come into an office 5 days a week. They're all new ways of engaging with work. I think in terms of where that demand is, it's highly inconsistent across cities and suburbs across the US, as I think you might imagine, hugely dependent on the layout of those cities, how far you have to commute, what the vaccination rates look like, what the underlying pandemic situation is all about. But in places like New York, Phoenix, Southern Florida, Texas, Atlanta, DC, we're just seeing massive demand come on back, and it's from small companies and big companies alike.
Great.
I think one thing,
Wayne? Yeah, go ahead.
Michael, I'd add,
Jeremy.
I should have mentioned, is really the demand we're seeing for sort of tenants to have sort of access to a campus, if you will, that landlords can provide. So what we're hearing from landlords is the tenants are looking for more than just the four walls of that office. They're looking for what does the landlord provide as relates to different locations, different cities, and how can a landlord activate that portfolio, their existing portfolio. And also existing tenants, as I mentioned before in the building, are coming to the tenants and saying, we're going to have some overflow. What do you have for us? We're going to be in LA next week. What do you have in our space? So having that connectivity across all buildings within a landlord portfolio is something that we're seeing a lot.
Sorry, Michael. What last time to interrupt you?
No, please do interrupt, man. I'm not getting paid for this.
Want to pile on to that a little bit more. I think the pandemic has done a lot of things. One thing, though, from my perspective at least, it's forced all companies to rethink their real estate strategies and opinions of it. And I think that it's opened up to a degree a section of companies, a subset that otherwise wouldn't have looked at Flex if it wasn't for the digital transformation and pushing everyone to either completely remove or scale down their real estate. So it's really nice to engage with companies that you would otherwise not have Flex discussions as they plan for the future.
Yeah, it's a great point, Wayne. I mean, that's sort of that's been my perspective, which is as horrific as the pandemic was to so many businesses like mine and many others. The one thing that's indisputable is it was an extraordinary accelerant of not just technology, but some changes that were beginning well before. I don't know how I'm preaching to the choir. You guys have been in this forever. So what does it look like now for demand? I mean, you said that it's strong, it's healthy. Is that something you're pretty confident about looking forward over the next cycle?
I will say, I think the industry had been growing exponentially especially over the last 5 years. But frankly, our biggest and I think most opportunistic era is coming up for all the reasons we've been discussing. And I'll share with you a couple of points, a couple of facts. If you asked me 6 to 9 months ago, how was demand? What I would share with you is demand was recovering, which was exciting. And I want to go on record with everybody on this call to say, look, it's been a tough 13 months. There's no doubt about it. Absolutely. You think about our collective business, right? If people are not engaged in offices, there's a dramatic impact on the overall business, right? So our core competency is amazing space and experience, right? So 6 to 9 months ago, demand was recovering, but the demand looked very specific. Our centers in our tertiary markets and suburban markets were performing extraordinarily well, right? Locations in which people could access walking, biking, or via their own cars, walk in, have a chance to access a private office, simply because they had an explicit need for space, was very, very strong. Whereas the downtown cores were still very quiet. What's happening today, though, is we just closed out April. April was our third strongest month in demand in the history of the company.
Wow.
Now, absolutely. Now, when we've been operating for 30 years.
Yeah.
So now the two biggest months we've ever had may not surprise everybody on this panel and certainly the audience. Our two biggest months ever were January and February 2020. And right before the pandemic, the business was absolutely exploding. And let's remember, all of us combined only represent 1.6% of commercial real estate. And I still hold true to the numbers that JLL came out with a couple of years ago, in which 30% of a corporate portfolio will be Flex by 2030.
I remember.
I firmly believe that we are going to continue to grow towards that number. So the demand has recovered. Now, I'm an optimist by nature, but I've learned, Mike, to be a pragmatist over the last 13 months. I think part of the demand right now is a backfill demand, right? Because companies are redeploying. Companies are looking for the first movers right now. They want to know how companies are going to redeploy, what that redeployment strategy looks like. And I know I think we need to talk hybrid, because we have to talk hybrid until the word hybrid doesn't need to be discussed any longer. We are going to be at a point where it's just going to be about work, because work will not be about place. It'll be what you do, right? So right now, I think we got a bit of a pent up demand, but what's happening, which is really nice, is we're seeing the sustainable demand for space and solutions from more companies than we've ever seen, which is great news. Enterprise companies are looking to say, how do we reevaluate our real estate portfolio? How do we make the corporate headquarters that we want to continue to keep? How do we make those more destination based? How do we make those a place where our employees want to travel to every single day, not need to any longer, but want to? So how do we, hate to say it, but how do we make them look like a great Industrious or a great Spaces or a great Regis, right? Which is collaborative space, brainstorming space, different ecosystems of space in a location, something that people love going to because they need to brainstorm, they need to collaborate, they need to engage, whether it's digitally or physically. So how do they take a subset of their space that they want to keep? And then what do they do with the rest? Because I think we're all reading these articles about companies redeploying capital and building out space and making it more engaging and all those pieces. Look, that's important, but the reality is not every company is going to have the capital to invest. And not every company is going to invest the same amount of capital in all their different locations. So what we're seeing now is this need where companies are reevaluating their real estate portfolio, and they're also saying, how can we support our workforce who don't need to be in one single location every single day? And the reality is, home plays a role, office plays a role, but then you've got the third place where flex space plays such a critical role. And I'm a huge believer that right now, everything we're doing is about pandemic and post-pandemic. But the reality as we get through this, as vaccination rates increase and people come back to the office, things become more normalized, the real lens of our decision-making process is going to be through the support of the environment. And this whole notion around the 15-minute city is going to become not just a wonderful theory, but in a novelty, but it's going to become necessary, because the ability for people to be able to work from different locations based on their client needs, their company's needs, and what they need to do that very given day or minute is going to become more and more relevant. And it's going to help people be able to help companies achieve their ESG goals, help them reduce carbon emissions, and just help people, frankly, live a better life while they're engaged as workers. So I think it's a dramatically exciting time.
Yeah, I couldn't be more excited about finally the emphasis and the focus now on climate and the built world. So that's for a whole nother webinar. But what I'd love, I think about where we are today and having coming through now, hopefully with the pandemic behind us. I look at this as it's tale of extremes, right? Like we will all work from home. Oh my gosh, everybody, the narratives about the office is dead and this, that, and the other thing, bullshit. And now it's like, oh, we're going to go all hybrid. We're going to go all, no, it's always going to be somewhere in the middle. It's never these degrees of extreme. But I do think that we've unlocked this sense of office that had not changed and adopted for generations. And I think tenants and landlords, everybody's now being forced to really evaluate their productivity. and what space can do for productivity and human nature. So what I'd like for each of you to do, and Jeremy, we'll go to you, is tell me about the impact on your company, right? What did you do that, has made your company better having come through this? And then we could jump into some questions I think that are coming in, but let's focus on your company.
Yes. Sorry, just to make understanding what we've done as a company.
How is your company, because you're a tenant, you've got a lot of employees. How is your company operating better, more efficiently? What are you doing today differently than you were, previously?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's no question been challenging, right? I think we've all experienced not being able to be in person and having everyone with you, but I think staying connected as best as we can is something we've prided ourselves on. I think it's really important to try to maintain culture as much as you can remotely, which is really challenging. So we spend a lot of time on maintaining culture, maintaining a sense of collaboration as best as we can remotely. Obviously, as we move towards back to work, that will all be solved for when we're all sitting in the same office. That's one of the things is hard to replicate over Zoom. But yeah, I think culture has been key, and maintaining and keeping culture in the business has been what we focused a lot on.
Anna, how is Industrious? I know the firm very well. Jamie's been a great friend of ours from the beginning, and others. How is Industrious different today than it was, pandemic, et cetera, et cetera? I mean, you've made some great announcements, some great moves. I know you've been expansion, but talk to us about how it feels to, internally.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the business of the business has transformed, and there's oodles of opportunity ahead, which is fun. I think internally, one thing that's interesting is we were always a distributed company.
Right.
And so the advent of COVID, of course, has changed the way we work, and especially in the beginning was pretty dramatic, but I think perhaps less so actually than other companies who historically were all together. So for us, like everyone has said, this past year has been rough, I mean, in so many ways, personally, professionally. But we spent a lot of time listening to our team and figuring out how we as a company and an employer can support our team's wellness in every sense of the word. I mean, through pandemic, through loneliness, through fatigue, through racism, through, and none of these things are over. They're all long journeys, and we don't always get it right, but we're iterating as quickly as we can. Secondly, we've really used this time to invest in capabilities and systems, the kind of classic, like when things are slow, get better at the stuff you're not good at and try to leapfrog. And I think that's been true in a number of areas, from internal technology kinds of questions to the way we sell, to the way we welcome members. And then coming out of COVID, specifically from a workplace point of view, we have teammates all over the country, but the largest group is in New York City, where we're kind of ostensibly headquartered, and we have the kind of great privilege of already having a network of Industrious locations all around the city and in Brooklyn and New Jersey. And so for our team here, we're working on our very own kind of, company, city team structure so that folks know how to get energy from socializing together at the office when they want to, but can hop around the city as well. And so that's been really fun and something I'm looking forward to.
That's wonderful. And thank you for touching on some of those issues, because they're critically important that we don't lose sight of those as we all go back to work. Mike, from your perspective, you work at one of the largest real estate companies in the world. Have you seen much changes coming through? You're obviously back at the office. What does it feel like differently today than, say, through the pandemic?
Well, as I shared with the rest of the panelists earlier, it was nice to see that I got caught in traffic the other day. So nice to see the city rebounding. It was a good feeling. No, our studio team, which is within Tishman Speyer, has always adopted a more flexible work environment. We have starting with one location, and now we have 20. Just it's in our kind of our DNA to accommodate that. What was really nice to see is that colleagues that are from different areas and groups in Tishman Speyer also look to studio to add flexibility throughout this pandemic. So it was a place where they could go work outside of the original office, as we had all different variants of work schedules.
Yeah, that's great. Wayne, this is not IWG's first rodeo. So, how does the company sort of internally view where you are today coming through the pandemic? What's different about the way you guys are seeing, your own internal operations?
I mean, it's a good question, Mike. You know us. We're an organization that, look, we're a $4 billion company that many ways tries to remind ourselves that we try to be a startup in many ways as well, right? Constantly being fluid and challenging ourselves to do it differently. And there's a few things that have taken place over the pandemic. One, to Anna's point, it is true. We are a distributed organization. We have team members who work across all of our locations in clusters of locations and cities, and their culture is established based on where they work, right? So one of the things we've been challenging ourselves to do culturally is to really continue to make sure that we're able to connect with every single team member to help remind them and help reinforce how critical they are to the success of our clients and to the organization. When we went through this pandemic, many times we had a few people working in a location and it went down to one person. It could be a lonely place at times, right? So keeping people connected, making sure they know how critical they are to the success of the journey was so important. So, utilizing as many tools as we can, knowing that we weren't going to physically see each other. I haven't been on an airplane for 13 months, right? So the ability to engage had to look differently. I will say that we've also taken the opportunity to make a shift where we've been building this physical network for 30 years. And what we've recognized is, look, we're 3,600 locations. Our goal is to become 30,000 locations. That hasn't changed. But we're seeing this complete shift with how we grow the market. And franchising has become a very successful venture for us during the pandemic. The partnership levels with our landlords has grown exponentially, which is great news. But then also, we've shifted the business to say, look, it's not just about being location centric. So we've rolled out new businesses and new solutions that help workers have the best day at work, whether it's when they're working from home. So rolling out a program called Home to Work, which gives them all the furnishings, the tools, the ergonomics, the technology, the social gathering elements, the access to expertise and services when they're working from home. And then also giving them new tech solutions as they travel to work. And then from there, we've made a number of acquisitions and built some new greenfield businesses around increasing our virtual office business as well, which has always been a very big business of ours. But we're kind of moving it to another level now, where it's beyond just the traditional virtual office and more of a service element and an extension for companies. So that's been a big piece. And then also, just two last pieces. We're really excited about our investment in the Wing. We do have a diverse brand strategy, which we operate about 30 brands globally and about 5 significant brands of nature here in the Americas. Having the Wing and Lauren and their team partner together with IWG is really powerful, because we've been we wanted to make sure that we have all the brand elements that our clients are looking for, and also recognizing that part of this is work and part of this is also having great space to engage in. So that's been a big piece. And then lastly, we've been rolling out new concepts. So we launched our first new spaces retail concept in Napa that's been very successful. We're getting ready to launch our next one in Bogota, based in a shopping mall. We're on the 3rd floor, H&M's on the 2nd, right? So new concepts to recognize the repurposing of space as sectors like retail is transitioning so dramatically.
Should have gone down that rabbit hole as well, because that's a good one to explore, but we're getting close to out of time. It's great insights. And I think for the audience, hopefully they see that the reason why all four of these companies are in such leadership positions is because they're constantly innovating, even through and particularly in, the most challenging of marketplaces that many of us old people like me have never seen before. Before we wrap up, there is one question. Was two questions. Kevin says, how about growth of flex industrial and logistics, particularly as institutional, existing industrial parks, not much left, mom and pop distributors to own or lease affordable space. So anybody want to jump on the industrial and logistics space?
It is a space of significant interest for us. We conducted an acquisition a few years ago in the UK with a company called BasePoint, which is light industrial, and we see that as a very good growth opportunity, both, by the way, in urban as well as suburban markets.
Anybody else want to jump on that one? Great. And then the last one is another good one. I was waiting for this one to come up, and it's something that I've been paying particular attention to from my lens, which is, the potential growth, and that we're already seeing it, of third-party booking systems and marketplaces for, your spaces, and how you all sort of look at that opportunity and market that may really be growing, booking marketplaces, things like that. Jeremy, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, we obviously provide those booking systems, but I think it's important that what sits on top of all of those booking systems is you have to have a proper infrastructure from the beginning that's powering the entire building. You can easily layer on a lot of those booking systems, and we as a company do partner with a few other APIs with some other companies if a particular landlord wants to use a third-party company. So that's sort of, I think, it's definitely growing space. It's something we do. It's arguably, I think, the easier part of the equation. I think the harder part is providing that, like I said, that sort of digital infrastructure at the core that powers that building, and everything feeds off of that.
To add to that, I think it also points out where the demand and need is. You have companies popping up that are providing booking services to place people in various spaces around the world. So, from my perspective, global access and flexibility clearly is a priority, and you see these companies really focusing on it.
I think the jury's out on whether or maybe when our industry will go full OTA, kayak style. It's certainly been on the radar for a long time. And I speak with a lot of customers and potential customers who say that they want, essentially what they're imagining is like, I go online, I search for spaces, I find the thing, I can see how it's rated, I know what it's like, I can curate for my team the parameters of where they want to go. And I think it remains to be seen whether in real life that's what people want and how they want to use it. So we're experimenting, but I'm curious about how it's all going to play out.
Me as well. Well, I think that's pretty much all we got. I see there's not any additional questions. Jeremy, thank you for hosting from essensys, and The Real Deal. Huge fan. Keep covering our industry. Keep covering these companies. From my perspective, you've got some of the great thought leaders and innovators and just good, decent humans that are on this panel and these companies. Wayne, Mike, Anna, Jeremy, thanks so much for spending some time with me today and sharing some these great insights with the audience. And again, thanks to The Real Deal for hosting it and all the great work that you all do.